Well, welcome back. As we had promised you, we have Latif Boru, Regional Director of Northern Rangeland Trust. Thank you so much for coming into the studio.
Thank you for having me, Tom.
Very well. Our first question is, how would you summarize the meaning of conservancy to somebody who is not in your industry?
Well, Tom, a community conservancy, I would say, is a community-based organization that has been created by the local people to conserve and to manage their own natural resources so that they can draw benefits from them. So it is actually managed, it's operated by the local people, and in most cases actually staffed by the local people. So that is how conservancy is.
Yeah, and I should have mentioned that you're the Regional Director of the Northern Rangeland Trust. Okay, so how do you break down the structure for that trust?
Well, the Northern Rangelands Trust started in the year 2005. It was actually started by the community conservancies that were in place before NRT came into being. And actually, so the NRT is structured in the sense owned by the communities. So the chairpersons for the different community conservancies sit in the NRT Council of Elders, and they are the governing body for the Northern Rangelands Trust. And this idea of starting a trust that brings together all the conservancies as a membership and also looks at the welfare of the conservancies was born out of necessity when the existing community conservancy at that time thought that they needed a body that could actually lobby and advocate for community conservancies in the sense, in terms of partnerships, in the sense of government support, in the sense of actually supporting businesses. So that is how NRC was actually born by the communities. So it is actually an organization that is run by the locals, and we have a CEO that reports to that governing council, which is called the Council of Elders, and we have also KWS as members of that governing council. We have KFS there. We have the county government sitting at that governing council, and we also have other partners that support conservation sitting in that council. And then under that, we have the CEO and the secretary that we work under.
Okay.
So now I am the regional director for the East region, which includes the Isiolo and Marsabit counties.
Okay.
Yeah.
You talk about support, and I know you get a bit of support from the county government, but there's a lot of work that you're doing, especially in the Northern Belt. How do you put together your funding?
Well, Northern Rangeland Trust, we get support from the donor community. We have very good partners that support the work that communities do. And we also get a lot of support from the county governments. Like last year, we got a lot of support from the county governments. And also the national government has come in to support. And because following the pandemic, we had a lot of downfall in tourism. And so the national government came in and supported the community conservancies in the country to a tune of about 1 billion shillings through the Economic Stimulus Recovery Program. So we're able to get a lot of support from partners, but we are getting a lot of the funding to support the communities coming out from the business enterprises that the communities are running. Okay. So we have this tourism that communities are getting, and they're able to run some of their costs through tourism, through other business ventures that they might have. And so it's a mixed kind of funding system.
Okay, it's a hybrid system, and of course some of them would be coming from across the borders. Huh?
Yeah, we have bilateral donors, we have local donors, we have philanthropists, individuals who also support the work that we do at NRT level, and the conservancies also have their own different, partners that support the work that they do, independently from what NRT supports them.
I notice a lot of your work, you're domiciled in the Northern Belt. Huh? Is there any reason, how's the ecological setup up there?
So the Northern Rangeland Trust, we work in 10 counties actually. So we have conservancies all the way in down at the coast. We have conservancies in Lamu, we have conservancies in Tana River, and also we have conservancies far north in Marsabit. And if you look at where, because the core business of conservancies actually is wildlife conservation, and communities getting to derive benefits from wildlife conservation. So that is where most of the wildlife are in northern Kenya. And also we have conservancies in other areas, but the Northern Rangelands Trust is a membership organization for the conservancies up in the north. We have other similar structures in the country that operate in North Rift region. We have others operating in Masai Mara. We have others operating in Taita Taveta. So we are the ones who are operating in the north. Okay.
Now there are a lot of, and this one especially from the locals, there's a sense in which people think that conservancy is a foreign concept and alien to their local way of life. And some of them are saying they have lived in a particular way for centuries. And to them that means that, it's been working. So why repair, according to them, what is not broken?
Yeah.
What do you tell those people who think that this is truly a foreign concept?
Yeah, Tom. I'd like to say conservation is not a foreign concept for our people, especially the pastoralists that we work with. We've been living with wildlife for a long time, and the reason why we still have wildlife in these rangelands is because our people have been conserving this wildlife. And so the notion of conservancy or conservation is not new. The Conservancy might be a new concept, and why we are working through that concept is our people have been living with this wildlife for a long time, Tom. Mm-hmm. And there's a costs that are involved with living with wildlife, because they use the same space, they use our grass, they use the water. And so we are trying to say, how can these communities, how can we benefit from this wildlife? Mm-hmm. And so a conservancy in itself is ensuring that these communities that live with this wildlife, about 65-70% of wildlife live outside protected areas. How can these communities benefit from this wildlife? Mm-hmm. And that's why Conservancy is there, mm-hmm. started by the communities, so they can draw benefits from wildlife, mm-hmm. and then they can create that leverage for communities to support conservation. Mm. So it's not living with wildlife has been there.
It's been there for a long time.
Yeah.
So the question is, why then, why do you feel the need, something that has been working, it's been there all the time. So why are we headed towards protectionism? And I say that because recently there was a conference somewhere in France. I don't know whether you heard about it. And the talk was expansion, protection. So the fear at the local level is, while you're expanding, their spaces are diminishing. So they're not able to even graze their livestock. And right there seems to be a conflict. So how do you reconcile these two things?
So Tom, the notion of conservation is not an exclusive kind of notion. It's actually an integrating kind of notion, where we integrate what the communities used to do in terms of their livelihoods, whether it's pastoralism. We have communities that are doing fishing up in the marine areas that have conservancies. Mm-hmm. So we have conservancies up in the north, people who take care of livestock. And so they've been living with livestock for a long time. So there's nothing new. Yeah. That we're introducing, like this concept of people living with wildlife is not new. Wildlife has been there.
But what might be new to them is this protection.
Yeah. So this now is not about protection here, is what are the benefits that these communities are getting. And what we are saying is this conscious protection of wildlife, or conscious conservation, or looking after wildlife, needs to be told to many people. So that many people are aware of the benefits of wildlife, and once they're able to get that benefit themselves, then it will be a leverage for them to start looking after wildlife, or being conscious of that wildlife occupy this space. So it's not about a matter of secluding communities, but it's actually how can more communities benefit from the wildlife that exists in their spaces. That is the notion that we're trying to.
So how are you getting the buy-in from those who genuinely fear that their spaces are diminishing?
Well, the notion that the concept that NRT has actually gives them the concept, the confidence to carry out conservation, because the concept and the model that we operate with the NRT is 100% community driven. So there might be fears in other concepts, but this NRT model of conservation is community led, because it is owned, it is operated, it is managed, and it's run by the communities themselves. So they have more confidence if they're able to do that on their own, rather than someone else coming and doing it for themselves, for them. So what we are trying to say is that what this model does is gives them confidence, it gives them that space, they're able to run their own programs, they're able to derive benefit from this wildlife, they're able to create their own partnerships separately, and not someone doing it for them.
So how can you draw a distinction between private conservancies and the community conservancies? Is there a difference, and what is it?
Yeah, I'll say there's a difference, because the private conservancies are owned by individuals. Like Tom would, you'd own maybe you have some land and you want to convert it into a conservancy, that becomes a private conservancy. But where we operate in a communal conservancy, where the land, where the resources are owned communally, and where we say benefits and the management has to be done communally. That is ensuring that even the women and the youth, the marginalized people, or the few people in the communities also have a say in decision making, have a say in how the resources are shared, have a say in who gets employed, have a say in what is done where. So that is a system that we are trying to say, if you let the people do it themselves, if you let the communities do it themselves, then they'll do it for a long time, it will be sustainable, they will enjoy doing it, and they'll get benefits, and the wildlife will also thrive.
So what are some of the benefits?
So we know conservancies have really done a lot in the north, Tom. We first of all, wildlife conservation, a big benefit that is done by the community. 70% already living in their land, and conservancies have gone into this space that they're actually even supporting species recovery programs. You go to Garissa, you think of Garissa. We have one conservancy in Garissa that hosts almost 25% of the entire known population of the Hirola antelope. This is a community conservancy. So they're doing a lot of work in terms of wildlife conservation. But how do you create that leverage? That leverage for them to do that is now creating businesses for them. That is where now the conservancies now start tourism ventures. They get their own employment. They sign their own, they have their own lodges. They get their own income. They decide, what are we doing with this income? We build schools, we build hospitals. We've done about 135 livelihood programs within these conservancies in the last 4 years. Because communities have also been able to receive over 160 million from tourism in the year 2019. Communities have also been able to employ 2,000 people permanently employed. Actually, conservancies now in the north are one of the serious employers. You can imagine 2,000 permanently employed people in the north from conservation. We also have about 3,000 who have been employed last year on casual basis. We also have business programs where we think, how can we engage the youth? How can we engage the women? And we're able to provide about 40 million for starting up businesses in the communities, and about 200 businesses have been started individually and by groups within the region. And this includes training them, financial literacy, matters of saving, access to markets, and things that they do locally at their own level. We have women who are doing beadworks program within the north, and we provide them to markets up to Australia, markets in the US, their own products that they do. They wear that beads every time. But we say, how can you create a product that you can sell and make money at the homestead level? Okay. And these are all money that goes into individual pockets, and that is how you improve livelihoods, by putting money into people's pockets. Okay. That's what we are trying to do.
Human-wildlife conflict, theft of livestock, how are you dealing with that to ensure that there's equilibrium, there's peace?
And and that is why we're saying, for that equilibrium to be created, you have to create a leverage for people to benefit from wildlife. Human-wildlife conflict has been there, and unless these conscious conversations are happening on how wildlife moves, how wildlife works, unless the communities are able to talk about this and identify that, elephants have been using this corridor for a long time. If we settle here, the elephants will actually come here. How can we protect the manyatas? These are the conversations that we are having. And KWS is working very strongly in this area and working with these community conservancies to ensure that we try and mitigate these human-wildlife conflict areas. You've talked about cattle rustling, and that is security is a national government function, but the conservancies have become very instrumental in building peace. Because these structures that exist in Isiolo are the same structures that exist in Samburu, the same structures that exist in Marsabit. And so community conservancies bring that platform where communities can come together and look at issues that surround them, like peace. Why are we fighting all the time? We have these elders that are involved, we have women that are involved. And currently we have about 80 peace ambassadors in these communities that their work is simple. They're just ambassadors for peace. They preach peace. They bring people together. They say, how can we, live together peacefully? How can we reconcile when there are conflicts here and there? And these conflicts will always be there.
Will always be there. And I ask that because, you hear reports of a number of cattle stolen, and I keep wondering, how can 5,000, 10,000 cattle just disappear? Tom, you work on the ground.
Yeah, Tom, we work on the ground, and these are marginalized areas, Tom. It's vast areas with little infrastructure in terms of communication, in terms of road networks. And, security is a government function, Tom.
It's a government function.
So we try to support in terms of building peace, because peace is me and you that can build peace. That's the message that we try to give.
That's a fair point. And when you're talking about peace, we've also seen some reports of poachers, quote unquote. It turns out they're just locals who are collecting plant medicine here or hunting for food to feed their families. And we also have people who, with all honesty, are so attached to land, and how emotive land, the issue of land is. As your closing comments, what would you tell us about, your stakeholder engagement at the grassroots to ensure that these people are living in harmony and really getting the true benefits from your organization.
Yeah, and many people will appreciate the work that NRT has done on the ground, especially. And this model, has become very critical in terms of conservation, because it's a model that actually gives the strength, it gives the power, if I say, to conservancies, to communities, to be able to run and manage their own natural resources. And what happens when community conservancies start is the communities will sit together and agree why they want to start the conservancy. They do meetings at their own level. They will create a platform where everyone is involved in there, and then they'll come to NRT now as a partner, as they'll go to other people and say, we've come together because we want to create this. Can you support us in terms of maybe capacity building? They'll go to someone else to ask for support in terms of maybe fundraising, and then the county governments are involved. If you look at the conservancy structure, for example, that we work with, the chiefs are always ex officios to that board. The MCA is an ex officio to the board. The KWS warden is an ex officio to that board. So all the partners that work in that area sit in that board, and the communities now drive all the agendas of the conservancy, and we come in as partners, as facilitators, just like any other partner.
And yet, we still see people being mistaken for poachers. In fact, there is a senior conservancy practitioner who has been complaining of harassment, from that belt of conservancy. So I'm asking, how do you then, reconcile those members of the community who have valid concerns that they're being mistaken for poachers? Some are going out to look for medicine, traditional medicine. Some are going to look for food for their families. How do you speak to those valid concerns?
I think those valid concerns can be raised to KWS, because KWS is mandated to arresting and investigating on any issues related to poaching. But the conservancies are based on, the ranger system of the conservancies is based on data collection and monitoring. So I would not see any maybe community member having any issue with the conservancy itself, but would have to know what is that specific challenge that might have occurred, and maybe KWS can pick it up at that level. But the ranger system is based on a simple monitoring and data collection of wildlife sightings, of numbers of wildlife, such kind of things.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. I have to end it there. Thank you, Latif, Boru, Regional Director, Northern Rangeland Trust.
Thank you, Tom.
Asante sana for coming through. Well,
Asante.
We're going to take a break, but remember, we have Cynthia Nyamai, who's standing on set. She's going to bring for us the day's business, so don't go away.
Yes, thank you, Tom.